Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to discuss about biological basis of behavior in which we will be mainly focusing about the neural communication, how there is communication between the neurons. Let us know about this in this video. So, talking about the neural communication, it's a fundamental process by which nerve cells or neurons transmit messages throughout the nervous system, enabling the brain to relay critical information about the body and the surrounding. For example, if somebody hits a book or duster in someone's face, what happens is immediately they try to defend it because what is happening in the brain is that something critical is going to happen, something dangerous is going to happen. So the body tries to block it. So, how this information is taken from the surrounding and it's taken from sense organ to spinal cord to brain and back to brain, spinal cord, and to the sense organs. So, it's about the neural communication which we are going to learn detailedly. Talking about the components of the neuron, neurons are the basic units of the communication. So, in neural communication, neurons are the basic units of the communication and they have this very important part to help in the communication between the neurons. The first one is the dendrites. What it does, it receives signals from the neurons. So, as you can see, the dendrites these are the dendrites, and these receive the single signals from the neurons. Cell body, which is the main part of the neuron, it contains nucleus and integrates the incoming signal. And axon, as you can see, these are the axons, and these are the axon terminals. This is the long fiber that carries the nerve impulse away from the cell body to other neurons, muscles, or glands. So what we have to understand here, if the neuron, they are the basic units of the communication, they have other main three parts to help during the communication, and the major role is played by dendrite, cell body, and axon. What does dendrite do? They receive information coming from the sense organs, and it sends these messages to the cell body, and then cell body sends this message to the axon whether to send this message to the next neuron or not. Now we are talking about the process of neural communication after knowing the basic parts of the neurons. So neural communication happens on the combination of electrical and chemical signal. So if you see this picture over here and this portion over here, these are the electrical signal, which we also say it as the action potential. So what happens here is within the neuron, between two neurons, when the information is transmitted, there forms a electrical signal, and to this electrical signal we say a action potential or nerve impulse. So what happens here is when this rapid reversal of electrical charge across the neuron membrane caused by the flow of charged particles in and out of the cell. What happens here is when dendrite receive a signal or information, the cell body is strong enough to reach a certain threshold. The action potential is generated and it travels down the length of axon toward the axon terminal. So if you see in this figure and this figure, these are the neurons. So these are the neurons. So and this gap is said as the synapse. So if from one neuron to other neuron you want to pass the message, but To pass messages within this very first neuron, there must be electrical signal, because without electrical signal, that neuron does not know whether to send that message to other neuron or not. So when this electrical signal is produced from one neuron, what happens is this neuron in part, that is axon part, there forms a chemical messenger called neurotransmitter, and from that neuron transmitter only the message is sent to the other neuron. So first process was electrical signal, and the second process is chemical signal, which we also call the synaptic transmission. So electrical signal was between this only neuron, but chemical signals occurs between the two neurons. So what happens here, when there is action potential or the electrical impulse flowing from the neuron to reach to the other neuron, it is not possible because there is the big gap, there is the small gap between the two neurons. So when the electrical signal reaches the axon terminal, it generally changes to the chemical signal for the communication between neurons at the synapse. So here it was the electrical signal, but when it needs to send the message to the other neuron, it has to change the electrical signal to the chemical signal for communication between the neurons. So, what is the synapse? It's a small gap or synaptic cleft between the presynaptic neuron and the postsynaptic neuron. So, what is the post or presynaptic neuron? So, presynaptic neuron means this one, and postsynaptic neuron means this one, because it is sending the message and it is receiving the message. So, the action potential triggers the release of chemical messenger, which are tiny in nature, and they are said as the neurotransmitter. And these neurotransmitters help to send that information from one neuron to other neuron chemically. Now this neurotransmitter cross the cleft means synapse, and bind to the specific receptors in the neuron's terminal. So what happens is, if this information is important, this neuron, this postsynaptic neurons also creates the electrical impulse or signal, but if it's not important, then it comes from the next neuron. So this is the major figure of the chemical signal, as you can see here. So in the next neuron, in the postsynaptic neuron, if it needs to send the message, there occurs the excitatory environment, and it generates its own action potential like glutamate. But if it's not necessary to send the message, then it shows the inhibitory nature, preventing it from firing. Example, GABA. So the combination of electrical conduction within a neuron and chemical transmission across the synapse allows for complex and rapid communication, governing everything from thought and sensation to movement and organ function. So if you talk about neural communication and want to learn further about it, please follow the references. Thank you for listening this video. Also, if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe my channel. And for further reading, you can go through this. Thank you once again.